It's indeed a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to address you today. I do have a small announcement before we start, however. Since your programs were printed, there has been a title change. The original title, The Coming Crisis in Veterinary Medicine, has been changed. The coming crisis is no longer coming. It's already here. What is a crisis anyway? A crisis is a turning point, a decisive situation, a crucial time whose outcome determines success or failure, perhaps even life or death. Do we have such a situation in our profession today? Indeed we do. The results of a complete current clinical examination of veterinary medicine reveals a distinct 4+ positive for crisis. Now, I'm not referring to petty bickerings between veterinarians or the big squeeze on us. You know, we have these social pressures and we have all these economic pressures, but we're not the only profession who has these pressures. The physician really is much worse situation than we are ourselves. We have a relatively low standing among the other learned professions. These are what I call false negatives, false positives. We have a seemingly safe, middle-of-the-road approach toward life. This is not really the crisis that I refer to. I refer to 4 crises of such major proportion so as to threaten our very existence. There are a couple of minor problems I'd like to throw in also, and then we propose to take a look into the future to see about future crises, of which we have several. Finally, I intend to show how we can successfully meet each of these challenges and how we can flourish rather than perish. Minor crisis number 1, shortage of veterinarians, present and future, in quality as well as in quantity. As you can see by the graph, by 1975, the crisis in quantity will be reached. At that point, population will continue to increase while numbers of veterinarians will decrease. But that's not all. What about the quality of the fewer and fewer veterinarians we're going to have? Of course, the new graduates will be much better trained than we were, and they'll possess sophisticated medical techniques and prompt information retrieval and instantaneous global communication. But will they be any better educated in social values? Will they be willing to adapt to worldwide health problems? Most of the scientists who ever existed are alive today. And most of their work has been done in the last decade. Are veterinarians prominent among them? Don't we think they ought to be? There is one hopeful program called CE, Continuing Education for Veterinarians. Nevertheless, the advanced degree and the additional training, which we now feel is merely desirable, will in a few years be mandatory for any aspiring veterinarian. We also expect national certification boards to be recognized soon by all the states. How many of us feel that licensure should be only temporary, with renewal dependent upon successful re-examination? I don't think I'd like to take a test. I don't think I could pass it. But then, if I couldn't pass it, do I deserve to practice? Minor crisis number 2. The staggering amount of knowledge being accumulated while the ratio of veterinarians to people decreases. One example, every minute of every day, 65,000 words of new material goes into print. Every 26 seconds, a new medical article becomes part of our scientific literature. Now, out of the massive pileup in any one month, could you or I dig out the information relevant to our professional needs? And if we can't, are we really serving our community satisfactorily? Okay, supposing everything were computerized. While we are standing breathlessly at output, waiting for the answer, some young intellectual is next door in the input department. He's programming new material which will make what we are reading now in the next 26 seconds obsolete. If these are only minor problems, I wonder what could be a major problem. Well, one great major problem with several subdivisions. At what appears to be man's intellectual peak and technological peak, the human race is losing the battle against itself. Man is rapidly destroying his home, the earth. What we are doing right now, and we don't even know it, is attending funeral services for ourselves. This is the true crisis. This is the real turning point. This is the situation which determines the ultimate outcome, life or death, for every living thing. As you can see, there's more to life than what goes on in my clinic or yours. The major problems of veterinary life are the major problems of all mankind, of course. But our own individual private crisis is, are we in the forefront of the struggle against destructive ecological forces? Are we involved at all? Are we merely being reluctantly dragged along by the other sciences? Or would we prefer to get off and let the world turn on without us? Let's go back a bit. Ever since Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt, people have been trying to reduce their environmental tensions. But the world was big then. Transportation was slow and communication was all but non-existent. If one place grew too hot or too cold, the neighbors grew too difficult to live with, the land became infertile, it was easy. Pick up, move on to a better spot. In some parts of the world, it's still possible for a person to sit down a while, eliminate his waste products, continue on to cleaner surroundings, and repeat this process indefinitely as a way of life. But there are very few such places remaining in the world today. Man's existence on Earth has been compared to a bacterial colony on an agar plate. It grew in every direction, spontaneous, unplanned, without control. In my opinion, we are now at the edge of the dish, and we face 4 distinct major crises, each with strong veterinary implications, and in each we are decided professional underachievers. They are starvation, contamination, psychological maladaptation, and pathogens. Number 1, starvation. About 170 years ago, the great economist Malthus predicted that food production could never keep pace with population increase. He was discredited. The Industrial Revolution came along and the scientists said, never, the world would never be hungry because we have improved agricultural methods. So how come today, 1 person out of 3 goes to bed hungry every night? Was old Dr. Malthus right? Too many people and not enough food? Not at all. We have right now the technical means and the know-how and the money necessary to start a program which in 5 or 10 years could eliminate nutritional want all over the globe. We can successfully raise healthy, robust animals and lush crops on any dismal tundra you could care to name. And as the inhabitants of that tundra ate better, their infant mortality would be decreased, and their life expectancy would be raised, and their existence could be made more joyful, and their future would be a pleasure to contemplate. You know, they could even raise themselves into a little GNP, and they might even become customers of ours and favorably affect our balance of payments. So what are we doing about it? Too little, too late. Looking back, of course, we're quite proud of the fact that losses from rinderpest and foot and mouth disease and brucellosis and TB and other nightmares no longer threaten us. What about the future? Are we studying the effects on animals of soil deterioration? Will our intensively cultivated land become depleted before we reverse the trend? Are veterinarians anywhere interested in trend reversal? Why not? You know, if the dinosaurs with much fewer needs, died off, can modern man with complex demands on his environment continue much longer? Crisis 2. Crisis 2 is called contamination. We assume, it's unlikely, but we assume that the colony of man can reach somehow an equilibrium with the supply of food. If that becomes true, the chances are very good that we shall drown in our own wastes. In the air, airline pilots describe the atmosphere between Boston and Richmond as a huge black smudge on the horizon. Deposits of urban soot have been found embedded in the Greenland ice cap. The old question, where are the snows of yesteryear? They're in the same place as always, only they're disguised in their new shade of 20th century black. Water? Water is in short supply all over the world. And furthermore, what there is of it is befouled with human and industrial wastes. The end products of manufacture and metabolism have just been dumped into the nearest body of water until today there is not a clean river in the entire world. Penguin bodies from the South Pole consistently contain measurable quantities of DDT. Who cares? Do we care any more about Lake Erie, which once had a multi-million-dollar fishing industry but now is oxygen deficient? Why is it oxygen deficient? Millions and millions of pounds of detergent dumped into Lake Erie yearly. The only life this once great lake can now support is a kind of primitive anaerobic type of sludge worm crawling in the mud. The Buffalo River is worse. The only life it supports is a bacterial count of 1.5 million per 100 cc, which is something like 1,500 times the estimated human safety level. The Mohawk River at one point is so full of oil and grease that it can't even be used to fight fires. What's that got to do with us? Well, as veterinarians, are we interested in the studies of the physiological effects on animals of changing water and air quality? Are we involved in air pollution efforts? Why not? The third variety of contamination is radioactivity. And I'm not going to refer to the type of radioactivity with which we are all familiar. I'm going to assume, and it's very unlikely again, that men and nations will learn how to live in peace with each other, and that we won't make any more bombs, and we certainly won't test anything, and we won't have any wars anymore. But if that should ever come to pass, we will still have to deal with the mountains and mountains of radioactive garbage which results from the peaceful uses of atomic energy. More and more natural fuels are being discarded. More and more nuclear energy is being used for man's peaceful purposes. Yet we have no effective means of disposing of these radioactive waste products, which are going to be accumulating at a terrific rate. Furthermore, we don't even have any means on the drawing board of disposing of these wastes. What do you think this can mean to the genetic constitution of man and animals? We can't even guess, and yet we're not even involved as veterinarians. Item 3, crisis number 3, psychological maladaptation, involves not only veterinarians, people, it involves animals. As human beings, we are growing into a society of emotional cripples. We're incapable of adapting to our own civilization. And the saddest part of it is that the most thoughtful and the most perceptive and the most productive of our people are frequently the most severely affected. Many of these individuals, frighteningly enough, are often in policy making and in action directing positions. Well, as veterinarians, are we making things better or worse? I say worse. In our own field, the entire concept of the emotional relationship between man and animal is practically untouched. Veterinarians generally smile quite smugly when this subject arises. Nevertheless, is there any reason why we should not undertake a serious study of this vital matter? Are we so superior to the client who cannot function without the psychological comfort and support of his pet animal? Or don't we think his anguish is real? An outstanding psychologist, professor of psychology, Boris Levinson, feels that a veterinarian will soon be included in every mental hygiene team. Are any of us prepared? No comment. Crisis number 4, pathogens. Well, finally we seem to be on familiar territory, but that's not so at all. Not at all. In the broadest sense, a pathogen is any biological enemy, unicellular, multicellular, you name it. And it's no longer shocking news that these killers are transportable from any part of the globe to here in just a matter of a few hours. What is shocking and new is the animal counterpart of human urbanization. That is, we are now raising larger and larger numbers of animals on smaller and smaller premises. Now, what does that do? Higher population density always leads to more rapid spread of disease. It also leads to increased virulence of the infectious agent. Question, is the rising tide of pathogen accumulation likely to overwhelm us? Probably. What are we doing about it? Well, we are generating a vast wave of indifference. The certification of animal movements across state and national borders has never been regarded by veterinarians as a holy crusade. And the most frequent response that we've ever gotten to programs of mass immunization and mass eradication has been an expression of horror at the cost. What can we do? We can keep one basic idea in mind. Disease of a single individual is disease of all. And the conquest of a single enzootic is victory for all. Remember, as John Donne said, no matter in whose barnyard that cowbell clangs, it clangs for you all. Future crises are even more interesting than past crises. Today, it's become very popular among intellectuals to talk about the punch cards and everybody's got a number and everything is mechanized and it's something to deplore. Well, today's conformity is nothing as compared to what tomorrow's life will be. For instance, I would like to mention, just in passing, Professor Delgado, Yale University Medical School, Department of Physiology. Electronic control of behavior in man and animals without the consent or even the knowledge of the individual controlled is already here. A startling array of physiological and behavioral and attitudinal responses, some of them contrary to nature, in quotes, can be produced electrically by remote control in animals and man. Professor Delgado has moved animals' limbs, mouth, eyes, ears, and so on, as if they were electronic toys under human control. He can make a monkey's pupil change unilaterally, at will, by pressing a button on a little black box somewhere. Affectionate animals have been stimulated to rage, subordinate ones to dominance. A charging bull, now watch this, a charging bull stopped in his tracks electronically. No wires, no metal can touch you. Monkeys and people have been sexually aroused, no pictures. Human speech and movement has been inhibited. Even feelings of anxiety and loneliness have been induced in people, all by the simple little bitty electronic triggering device. If that isn't enough, learning has also been controlled and predicted by oral or parenteral administration of ribonucleic acid. That's called RNA, and we all read about it in the papers. However, RNA taken from the brains of trained hamsters is given to rats. And the rats then very, very quickly learn the tasks that the hamsters had been taught. They learn it much faster than control rats who have not been given the RNA. Well, now, that's a very funny story about eating a Professor burger for lunch, or quick, I've got midterms, get me the philosophy sandwich. That's great. But it's not so funny to consider that we shall soon be able, maybe even prenatally, but certainly soon be able to inject infants of any species with exactly the knowledge we wish them to have. And then we can direct and energize these infants by remote control. Who will be the queen bee and who the drones? Matter of fact, human beings' memories have been improved after memory loss, have been improved dramatically by injections of RNA. Now remember, this is not science fiction. These are simply scientific reports by animal physiologists and animal psychologists, and they're written up in recognized scientific journals. By the way, are any veterinarians involved? I haven't heard of any. Shouldn't they be, really? Well, that's enough. These challenges, you know, can all be met. Of course, the crisis is total. So the solution, if there is one, must be equally gigantic. Well, what's the first step? The first step must be an example. Supposing we start with a survey among Midwestern farmers. 70% of those tested did not know the meaning of the word antidote. About a third of them missed on the simple word toxic. Some of them even didn't know what hazardous meant, and believe me, if you didn't know toxic, that's a hazardous situation. About 37% of the farmers tested didn't even know what lactation meant. Now, I'm not condemning the great farmers of our marvelous Midwest, not at all. But if this is the state of literacy and visual comprehension in a relatively high-level socioeconomic community, that's a sociological term, what's the capability of a new citizen from an emerging nation? You know, he doesn't even know he's emerging. Now, are we willing to teach him the meaning of toxic, or the meaning of antidote, or the meaning of hazardous? And will he be willing to learn? And supposing he's not willing to learn, are we going to be able to teach him the value of being willing to learn? And in so doing, will we take into consideration not only our own scientific and educational values, but will we take into consideration his social and his political and his theological values as well? But how else could we hope to communicate with people whose cultural values are so different from our own in areas where animals have status, people don't? Can we communicate? I mean, communicate about freedom from want, from disease, and from ignorance. Supposing we're willing to do our part. Supposing together with all the other learned professions, we are willing to participate in helping the earth move along. Can it happen before all the lakes and the rivers become cesspools? Before we manufacture smoked ham live on the hoof through the wonderful world of air pollution? Before we ourselves join the sludge worms at the bottom of Lake Erie? Well, the answer depends on three items. The crisis can be favorably resolved if we employ three attributes, three simple little attributes which we already possess, but we do not seem to be using. Intellect, responsibility, and communication. You know, the solution to these crises depends on intellect and intellect alone. True intellect can never be the slave of technology. Only non-intellect and anti-intellect submit to mechanical masters and to prefabricated thought. The independent man, to be master of his environment, of course, must first master himself. What do we do as veterinarians? As veterinarians, our primary duty is to become aware of our own social value. Now, of course, we recognize the value that we have to society economically and scientifically, but we have never fully understand our true broad meaning for mankind. We are so important that mankind's chances of survival are practically nil without us. Now, I'm not referring to food inspection or any of those routinized jobs that we now hold. You know, there's a little machine in the bank that reads your check and deducts the appropriate amount from your account and marks it up on your statement and sends you the bill at the end of the month. That little machine, or one like it, will soon be able to read a whole conveyor belt full of carcasses. Now, that is not what I'm referring to. I'm referring by using the abilities we have to think and to decide. And that's something no machine can ever do better than a man. Well, what if we do realize our importance? What's the next step? Well, if we're important, we have to recognize and accept the responsibility of our position in the world. We have to respond to the challenge of multiple crises. We must participate. Paying taxes isn't enough anymore. We must join with our fellow human beings in the struggle against that triumvirate of modern enemies: pathogen, pollution, and privation. In every community, no matter how small, there's a group of people, a little organization that's interested in struggling against its environment. Join it. And if there isn't one, start one. Lastly, we must communicate. We talk. Now, of course, we're very proud as veterinarians to know that two professors on some distant campus are talking in a very scholarly way to each other. Great. Or in the Pentagon, two generals are mulling things over between themselves. Oh, are we proud. But you know, the clinician must talk to the researcher. And the professor must talk to the military. And the military has to talk to the student. Because we all must know what the other is doing, so that the great battle may be coordinated and won. And finally, we have to talk to people. All people. Not just Midwestern United States farmers. Every human being on Earth. And we must make certain that they understand and respond appropriately. Or everything that mankind has achieved in the past 20,000 years could be wiped out in the next 20. It's a monumental struggle. Is it worth it? Do we have a choice? Apparently not. For if we wish to live like human beings, it appears that we shall have to act like human beings. And if we wish to be respected as veterinary professional people, we should really have to act the role. We know what we once were. We were once animal healers and protectors, and we were once sanitarians. No more. No more, not in the face of these crises, which are not coming but are here. We are indeed approaching the winter of our profession. Will we have a spring? It's up to you. Thank you very much.